Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm really excited today because we are bringing a new person from our team. It's going to be sharing with you. And one of the things that I love and admire about people, and I've had the privilege of meeting people all around the world that have the capacity to overcome significant obstacles in life. And I believe this is something that the Lord gives us grace for. And for me, it's also one of those balances that you see that we as people are challenged and tasked to overcome things and be resilient. But then also the Lord gives us grace, obviously, to walk through challenging times. And today, I'm excited because we get to hear a story from someone behind the scenes of PI that makes so many things happen. You see a lot of people that, you see our Instagram or different things that shows people going around in training schools and teaching, but then there's a group of people that are behind the scenes more often than they are in front of people. And they are doing incredible things as well. But today I want to introduce you to, you've seen Ryan before, he's been on our podcast, but to his wife, Kelsey Harris. Everyone give a hand, even though you're probably not going to give a hand while you're listening to a podcast. But no, I'm excited to have you, Kelsey. Welcome. So
Behind the scenes is where we like it.
behind the scenes is where you like it, but here we are. So it's really funny actually that you say that, so we've lived in Poland for almost 7 years now. And we were meeting with a couple whenever we were getting ready to go, and we were talking with them, and they're very prophetic. And one of them turned to Brandy and said, "Hey, I really feel the Lord is going to show this incredible ministry where you're going to be preaching and teaching in front of people." And at that time, she had never spoke
That's
or
right.
that, and so she was like Sarah, in the Old Testament. She just started laughing. It's like, yeah, you've got to be kidding me. So now she does it. So behind the scenes yesterday, who knows what the future holds,
You never
Kelsey.
know.
So, so what I want to talk about a little bit is kind of your story growing up with some of the physical challenges you had, and then Ryan, you can jump in as well, and just what it was like, marrying someone that's way tougher than you are.
Yes.
I married someone that's extremely tough
Yes.
and disciplined, which means that I don't receive as much grace as I feel like other people do.
Yeah.
So I just want to talk through that. And for me, one of the things that was really impressive is at the time of this recording, about a year ago, we were together as a PI team, really for the first time in a long time, and we were actually in the UK at a
Mhm.
conference, and then we were walking around, and I was kind of watching just everyone, and then I looked and I noticed you had been limping a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh, did Kelsey roll her ankle, and did I not know about it? And yeah, what have I
Yeah.
done? Have I, or more, it was more of like, what has Brandy done? Because Brandy's walking so fast. We're all trying. Yeah, she is fast paced, so we're trying to keep up. So just kind of, if you can just tell a little bit of your story and just kind of uh, what just some things that you've overcome, and we'll just jump in here and there.
Okay. Yeah, y'all are gonna have to help me out. Just basically, I was born with bilateral congenital hip dysplasia.
Okay, stop right there.
Okay.
So for people, I know what that means,
hmm
but for everyone else,
You're married to a PT as well, so that
yeah.
helps.
And by me saying I know what that means, I really have no idea.
Okay.
But so if you can speak in
No
please
terms.
please explain this to Mason, your daughter,
To my
what this
daughter.
means.
Okay.
Hip
So,
dysplasia for dummies.
yeah, okay, that's what we're
Yeah.
gonna try to do.
I'm not saying your child's dumb. It's more actually for me.
Okay, my child's very smart.
Yes.
Anyways, so basically, both my hips, that's where bilateral comes from. The hip socket was not ever formed correctly. So you have like a socket, and then you have the ball part of your joint. The ball part would never fit into the socket because it was like incomplete. So starting at a really early age, I think my first surgery was when I was like 2. But I
Oh
was
wow.
in like casts and harnesses and all that up until then. They were trying to fix it without surgery. But they had to form my sockets. So starting at 2, they started performing surgeries where they would, one of them, they shortened my leg and they took some leg bone and they like created a socket, and then they screwed my hip, the socket and the ball part together so that they wouldn't keep slipping out.
Whoa.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that hip dysplasia for dummies?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and I knew sometimes how to say that word correctly, and I'm not going to say it on this podcast because it's recorded, and I'm probably going to say it wrong. And so,
And congenital just means you were born with it. So it didn't
aha.
happen later on. You were just born with it. And
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
there's all my words.
So then throughout, I know there was a series of, obviously as you grow, probably there's
Mhm.
things that are going on. So kind of what was that experience like growing up?
Yeah. So like, yeah, as you grow, your hips move and change. So they would have to do surgeries and like remove plates and screws and then place them in different spots. I don't know. What would you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like what?
Just multiple surgeries. I think over time I've had 6 like intensive surgeries and then a couple of just small ones where they would just go in and like remove the screws and let my hips be for a little bit. And then they would maybe like, I don't want to say hurting, but bothering me a little bit. And so they would have to go in and do more surgeries and just fix them a little bit.
One also too for you, not only physically, but cognitively, because you weren't as mobile as most normal kids. Cognitively, you really progressed and excelled in
What are you
other
saying?
areas.
I was just smart.
That you were smart.
I mean,
I couldn't walk.
because you couldn't, she couldn't, so she was, yeah.
Wow. Wow. So that's really intense. And then for you, I know you guys have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And first, before we get there, I just want to backtrack. So when you guys met, kind of Brian, what was that like for you whenever, you start kind of get into a relationship a little bit and
Yeah.
I actually don't have any clue where this story is about to go. So I'm excited to see
Great question.
where that is. And we're going to circle back to a couple of things the Lord's been showing us here in a minute. But
Yeah. I don't recall specifically. She's got a better memory than I do. As far as like maybe when she told me,
I think
but
I
I
told you pretty quick.
it was pretty quick. But I do remember the conversation, and she said, um, "So you've seen how I walk, right?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "You've seen how I walk, right?" And so I'm assuming this was pretty early because at some point I probably was
Yeah.
observant enough to maybe realize that she did. And there's a reason for that, and I can let her explain kind of why there is a little bit of a limp as you were seeing in London. But and so we just started talking through, and early on I just realized like, man, she's just been through a lot at her young age already. And even just thinking about her parents, she's the oldest, so this is her first child. They were changing a diaper through a cast, through a hole for the
wow.
first year of her life.
At the
Yeah.
age of like 20.
Yeah.
So like just the resiliency between her parents and her, like just first child, this is all fresh and new. Um, really big challenges there, and they were very young. I think your parents were, yeah, 20 years old. So I mean, just thinking through that at my age, at the age when we met, 20, 24, 23, 24, it was just like, man, they were like my age going through that. I don't really
Yeah.
have kids yet. I mean,
Yeah.
so it was just a good perspective for me and what people actually go through as far as when it comes to breaking through barriers and obstacles and resiliency.
Yeah, for me, this is anytime I watch any like a movie when I see someone overcoming stuff, that's where I start getting the tears.
Yeah.
It's not like when someone, you lose something or something. It's usually, and so that's just incredible, just and so why did you have the conversation early on?
Well, I think I've always been, I don't know if self-conscious is a word, but aware of how I walk. And so if I don't say something, then I'm like, oh, they're just going to wonder, like, why does this girl walk like that? So I just bring it up and say, hey, if you haven't seen it, this is why. Like,
Yeah.
just put it out
Yeah.
there and then
Yeah.
after that.
There's no questions after that.
This is it.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
how it is.
They're not thinking she rolled her ankle for sure.
Yeah, thinking I rolled my ankle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really concerned. I'm not a very good observant tour guide leader. I should be fired, but
No, you're
Uh,
good.
yeah. So obviously with hip dysplasia, what did that mean? And what did doctors tell you as far as even having kids?
So as far as having kids, it was always like a questionable thing, and they weren't sure if I was going to have kids or not, mainly because of the amount of x-rays I've had, but also because my hips are screwed in place. Like they can't do the normal thing that women's hips are supposed to do when they have babies. So that was another conversation we had to have at first, and then we had to meet with my doctor and talk with him about it, and he was like, "Okay, I'm comfortable with you having kids, but you're definitely going to have a C-section." So we just
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah. And now you have two
Two.
kids that
Mhm.
are very active.
Yes.
And we were at your house not like
Oh,
2 days ago, and
Yes.
and there was, you know, a full-blown wrestling match happening. So both of them
Yeah.
are full on and everything. And so, and one of the things that, and this is where I just want to kind of make a bit of a shift and just talk through some things. And obviously, none of us are perfect and we're still walking through our stuff. But one of the things I really admire about people that walk through really challenging things that not all of us walk through, you know, everyone. And I think what something's really interesting is everyone has something that they're walking through, and us being able to bounce back and be resilient and overcome. And one of the things I admire about you, especially once I start hearing your story more and more, is that you really didn't let that. Obviously, you know, felt a little self-conscious and you're aware of it, but you really didn't let that define
Yeah.
what you wanted to do in life. I mean, you have a RN
Yeah.
as well, so you are a nurse, which I have a number of friends that are nurses, so I know they spend a lot of time on their feet and things. And so how, you know, how can you encourage people to not let even the past define where you want to go in your future? Because I think that's something that in today's world, sometimes we tend to run towards is kind of mental health is really good. But in my opinion, sometimes we begin to make our identity rest in like what happened back
Yeah.
here instead of like what the Bible says, and then also what our future holds, which for me, I try to be more excited about the future,
Yeah.
regardless of what, you know, regardless of what the news says.
Yeah.
But, you know, I always believe that if we're walking in the kingdom, the best days are this way and not this way, regardless of how great or how awful the past was. So for you, like, kind of what are some things that you just made some decisions on, and even what the Lord showed you through that process?
I think I just decided early on that I wasn't gonna let it like hold me back from things. I played sports in junior high and high school, like, tennis, I guess if you can count that as a sport. I'm gonna count it as a sport.
It's actually their studies show that that's the most difficult sport to play. So
So
there you go. So
I was like, I'm gonna
so
do
not
this.
only yeah, fantastic. You chose
I was like, I'm gonna play tennis. It's not gonna stop me. Me and my dad would go work out together all the time. I just decided it wasn't gonna hold me back from things. I wasn't gonna be, I don't know, debilitated by it. And I think the Lord has shown me through that if I can get through like high school and tennis and I can work out with my dad and lift weights and do all these things, like even though that's just physical stuff, like there's nothing that I can't do.
Hmm,
Like if I've
yeah,
had this difficulty and I've gotten past it, there's nothing I can't do because I've got him and he can get me through any of it.
yeah.
So
To me, that's amazing. And to me, I enjoy. Uh, you know, I heard someone the other day say, "Lord, do what you want in me, so I can be who you want me to be,"
yeah,
which is a beautiful prayer
no, it is.
until like what he needs to do
Yeah.
is yeah, I mean what he needs to do oftentimes is take us through challenges. I mean it's like working out, you know. I mean for you probably one of the great things I'm sure that you're able to not let uh you know your diagnosis define you was that you were willing to work out so you grew in strength
And I could never do what everybody else did or exactly the same way, but I could still do it and I could do it my own way.
yeah, and that to me that's you know that's amazing. But you know when you're working out, you are pushing yourself and
Hmm.
things, and usually there's resistance. You
Yeah.
know, like if you have a 5 pounds or 2 kilos for those of you in different parts of the world, that's a different resistance than you know 50 pounds and you know 25 kilos for those of you in
Sure.
different parts of the world. Yeah, quick conversion there. So. Yeah, but for me, you know, and Ryan, what are some things that you've learned just from your wife, just in her ability to overcome things, and that you've been able to take within your own? Because Brandy's overcome a lot as well in different areas and things, and
Sure.
so that's something that I take to heart.
Well, and I just love that the Lord knows us so well that he knows that I probably couldn't have gone through that. Like
Yeah,
there's different ways that he built resiliency in me than he does in Kelsey.
yeah,
And so I think that for her, me watching her just get through things and to be honest, like there's been some things too, like this resiliency, like no matter how tough it is, she'll push through. And I've seen that work in very healthy ways, but I've also seen it work in unhealthy ways as well. As just being there, and so it's just she just has this grit about her that not a lot of other women have. but again, it's due to her circumstances, And so I admire it. I really do. I just think that we learn differently. And like you said, what the Lord does on the inside of us, that's the whole process of becoming more like him, right? As we spend time with him, we become like him, and then we begin to do as Jesus did. And that's like, I think the whole goal in the kingdom is to be
Yeah.
able to look more like him. But like you said, it starts on the inside. Now, whether it's physically with some screws or it's an emotional healing, or mental health, all those things, which are some things that I've experienced. Um, it's still building endurance, resilience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for me, one of the beautiful things about resiliency is I believe it increases our capacity for faith because I love what you just said
absolutely.
a minute ago. Just to, you were talking about you weren't going to let this define you, and you said, there's nothing that I feel like I can't try to go do and things. And whenever you start walking in the kingdom, there has to be a resiliency because you know, he's going to ask us to do
Yeah.
things beyond what we're able to do,
Yeah.
even if that means coming on a podcast. It's like, I remember whenever you joined, it was like, don't make me do this, don't make me do this, don't make me do this.
Any hip thing I've ever done.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, give me another screw.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like the number one thing people are afraid of is actually public speaking.
Mhm.
And so it's higher than death. Death by public speaking would be the worst,
Would be
the
worst
worst.
fear that people have. So yeah, but I think that's something that we can really take hold of, and for me, I look back on the challenges I've had in my life, and last number of years I've had pretty significant challenges, but it builds that fight in you, and I think we can't. Sometimes we want to run from the hard, but actually the hard creates the people we can become, so that God can use us. And it's not to say He's like just saying, I'm going to throw another shipwreck at you or whatever
Right.
it is. But there's this tension where we can really appreciate, you know, I think for you probably, and for both of you, you can look back and say, hey, we've already been through some stuff, so we can trust what's going to happen
That's right.
next and because we have some quote unquote altars that we can look back on, not altars where you sacrifice
Yeah.
something, but you read the Old Testament stories and you see Abraham, and they would build an altar every time the Lord
Yeah.
did something or spoke. And it was every time they would pass that, they would remind them, God's brought me through this, and and He built something in me.
Yep.
So for me, that's something that I really admire about both of you guys. I really admire that, uh, but the challenge is, I don't want us to rest, on where we are today because there's always something new to go on. So, any closing encouragement for people just to build a resilient life that they have just from, your story. And I really like what you said before we get to that is, everyone has something that the Lord's can help turn in our life
Sure.
to build that resiliency. And maybe like you said, maybe it's something with something else. Maybe it's your life situation. Oftentimes it's things that we don't have any control over. I mean, you didn't have any control over the final formation of your,
Right.
your hips and your womb, that wasn't a part of, and a lot of times, people can have things that they go through and experience, and that does become a defining thing in their life instead of something that they can look back and say, oh, God changed this, and now actually I can walk in victory. So, any closing thoughts you have just to encourage people to live uh, a resilient life, and even what the Lord's showing you right now as we continue to grow in our capacities.
Yeah. I think the first thought I get is this, it's just it's required in this journey. Like whether you're listening to this and you're a person of faith or you're not, I think you realize that life is tough.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus said, in this
This
life
life,
you will have
John
troubles.
16:33. That's
Yeah.
like
And,
my
and
go-to, man.
yeah, and some of it is, there is potential
Yeah.
persecution
Yeah.
for making Jesus famous.
Sure.
But I think also Jesus was acknowledging that, hey, life is not great.
Yep. 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 Trials and tribulations. I mean, that's the guarantee. He didn't say you may, he said you will. And I think you got Romans 5 and Ephesians 3, and it's just talking about, and James talks a lot about this too, like count it all joy, brothers and sisters, like count it all joy. I mean, I think about Jesus when he's like, it was the joy set before him is the reason that he endured the cross.
Hmm.
And so it really is from a mental standpoint for me, it's just like when I'm going through, whether it's the smallest of things or the largest of things, when I'm going through a challenging time, is trying to dig up some joy in the midst of it and try to like really strengthen my spirit. And in Ephesians 3, that's what he talks about. Is like our role is to be rooted in love and to be strengthened by his spirit, and he will strengthen you and produce joy from that place. But anyway, so I think just from a biblical standpoint, it's like the Bible is a book of the story of love through resiliency. I mean, look at that all I mean, the stories are just people
Hmm.
trials and tribulations. I mean, that's the Bible. And we learn many stories about people who just went through really, quite frankly, way tougher than I think I could probably ever endure. But he did something in the midst of that, and the outcome was always greater for them in their obedience, in their faith as it grew and strengthened. So just like a muscle, you gotta put it under some pressure, just like anything beautiful, a diamond. I mean, people talk about a lot of this today because of just our world. It's a broken place. So it's required, but as an encouraging thing, if you can find joy in the midst of it, you'll be better for it in the end, I believe. That's what I found to be true.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm gonna piggyback off his like find joy in it. I think the joy that I could like physically have seen is like I've been able to help other moms who have had babies with hip dysplasia. Like,
Mm-hmm.
look where like they might have hip dysplasia, but it's not going to stop them. Look where I've come.
Hmm.
Our own kids, both of our own kids were diagnosed with hip dysplasia, and although it was hard, it wasn't like life shattering. I'm like, no, look, like I've been through
Yeah.
it. They can get through
The
it.
diagnosis is
Yeah,
not the definition
That's
of who
right.
they
That's
are.
right.
it's not going to define who you are. And so, I think my biggest joy in getting through it is that I can help other people
Hmm.
get through it as well. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank y'all. Yeah, and I think, one of the things I'm learning is really to appreciate it sounds almost weird, but I heard someone speak on this years ago, and to appreciate the privilege that you can endure some things because, and that's exactly what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, all of a sudden your life and your victory you get to share with other people. And it is a requirement. If you want to be successful in life and not be, and that's in the kingdom, that's in any aspect of life. And so we have a course, we call it Reality of Life and Ministry, and I actually wish we'd just call it the Reality of Life because the first half is dealing with the first hurts and
Yep.
wounds and how to not let that be projected onto other people, especially in ministry. Then the next part is dealing with conflict with others, which never happens,
never.
and the other one's dealing with failure, or oftentimes things that are happening to us that we can't control, and things. And so for me, I just, that's something I'm trying to appreciate the privilege that, Lord, if you're willing to let me endure this, there must be something so much greater. And there's so many other people that I get to minister to out of this experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really powerful, and it's helping me really shift my mindset on how I approach difficult situations. I'm not great at it all the time, and it's great to have. That's why it's so important to have people around you
That's right.
that can, not just let you walk in, like try to help you escape your situation, but help you actually walk through the situation. So my wife's done wonderful at helping me. Like, hey, Josiah, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna make it through whatever it is we're going through. But yeah. So I just want to encourage all of us. Each one of us has stories. Some of them are significant, sound more significant than others, but all of us are walking through different things where the Lord is building resilient character so that we can overcome and be victorious. And so I just want to encourage all of us to continue to appreciate and count it joy as we endure the challenges of life, but then also as we overcome them, realize that our victory is not just for us. It's for people around us, whether that's our kids, whether that's others in similar situation, or if it's just a testimony hey, I was able to overcome something and look at what God has done in my life because of that. So I just want to encourage us to live that life where we can walk in that way so that we can bring Jesus. And each one of us has different stories, which means each one of us gets to show a different dimension of the gospel, which for me, that's really powerful and fun that we get to do that. So thank you guys for joining. And we look forward to seeing you next time on another cast or another episode of Unfiltered.